I think it's already live ready.
Yeah. Is my slide visible?
No. You have to share screen. You have to open the file first. Then only you can share the. Oh, all right, got it.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So we'll start with the invocation. Om Ajnana Timanandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmitram Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yudapatakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamsya Sri Rupam Sagrajadam Sagana Raghunathan Vidam Samsajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Sri Vishakan Yadamsya He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय Hare Krishna. The title for today's session is Prakrti, Material Nature. In the past two sessions, we covered the first two of the 5 core topics of Gita. 2 weeks back, we covered the topic on Supreme Absolute Truth, which is actually on Ishvara. Then last week, we covered the topic on Jivas, the living entities, and today is on Prakrti, material nature. So, from the intro in Bhagavad Gita as it is by Srila Prabhupada, material nature is not independent. She is acting under the directions of the Supreme Lord. As Lord Krishna says, Maya Dikshana Prakriti Suyate Sa Characharam. This material nature is working under my direction. When you see wonderful things happening in the cosmic nature, we should know that behind this cosmic manifestation, there is a controller. Nothing could be manifested without being controlled. It is childish not to consider the controller. So it is as simple as that. However, to many so-called rationalists and self-proclaimed intellectuals, they always say that there's no God and everything comes from nature. But they cannot think beyond who is controlling the nature. For instance, a child may think that an automobile is quite wonderful to be able to run without a horse or other animal pulling it. But a sane man knows the nature of the automobile's engineering arrangement. He always knows that behind the machinery, there is a man, a driver. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is the driver under whose direction everything is working. Even if we take the example of this so-called AI or artificial intelligence, this despite belonging to the computer science background, I myself find it quite amusing whenever people talk about AI, because that itself, to me, when I view it from another perspective, that itself is an example of how Krishna's Maya Shakti works. Because in the 1950s, when this AI concept was being sold to a lot of people, in the 60s, there was this period called AI winter, because when they first came out with this term AI, so people started to visualize the full-fledged robots, like which would behave exactly like human beings. But nothing was really working out in terms of in terms of tangible outcomes. So there was one period in the 1960s where people started to avoid investing too much in AI, because there was not much fruitful outcome out of the investments. So it's all because of this childish nature of human beings, who think that they can simply create artificial creation that is as good as Krishna's creation. So by definition, when we talk about artificial intelligence, it simply means that we are trying to create something artificially, and at the same time, it will be as good as the original. However, since those days, we are still actually taking baby steps towards the actual outcome. And even if tomorrow we have like full-fledged robots with all the 7 types of intelligence uh, as one package, still those robots will not be completely autonomous, because still human beings will have to build those robots, and also to update the knowledge base and all that. Still human effort will be required. So on one hand, when the so-called rationalists and intellectuals, they say that there's no God, so even when we are running after our material goals, there itself we can see Krishna's Maya Shakti at work, especially even when you look at this AI kind of example. So as mentioned in the previous passage, the verse is from chapter 9, 9.10. Maya Jakshena Prakrti Suyate Sa Characharam Hetuna Nena Kaunteya Jagat Viparivartate. This material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So the material manifestation, when the material nature is manifest, all the living entities they appear to be alive, just like in our previous sessions we have seen the period during 1 day of Brahma, like how many cycles of all the yugas are there in 1 day of Brahma, and how the during the every cycle the entire material nature becomes manifest and then unmanifest, and the cycle keeps going on and on according to the will of Krishna. Actually, that too, Krishna is not directly involved in this material nature business. It is all under the control of Mahavishnu, who himself is an expansion or an avatar of Krishna. Like in our session on Supreme Absolute Truth, we saw the differences between mere expansion and avatar. Like avatar begins from the Purusha avatar, where it is actually an expansion which descends to the material world, unlike expansions in the spiritual world. So also in chapter 7, Krishna himself has said, deluded by the 3 modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and inexhaustible. So most of the conditioned souls, especially those who deny the existence of God, or even there are a lot of people who are believers, but even in our community, there are people who think that Krishna is an incarnation of Vishnu, which is not true, because from the material world, it appears to be like Mahavishnu is the most is the topmost god, and just because Krishna descended to this world as an avatar, like as we know, in the first canto of Bhagavatam, chapter 3, 22 incarnations are mentioned. So the avatar of Krishna is mentioned as the 20th incarnation in that chapter. However, that Krishna, son of Vasudev, who descended to this material world, is just an avatar, but people don't realize the Swayam Rupa of Krishna, who is there in Goloka Vrindavan, in the spiritual world. So this vision of conditioned souls, which is bounded by this material world, makes them think, actually disables people from realizing the supreme absolute truth. That too because of being deluded by the three modes. That is for the believers, and even for non-believers, they tend to say that everything comes from nature. That too because they are conditioned by the three modes of material nature. However, these are even the modes of material nature, they are just byproducts of the inferior material energy of Krishna. Then so another passage from the intro section. In the 15th chapter, 15.1 of the Bhagavad Gita, the real picture of the material world is described. The material world is described as a tree whose roots are upwards and branches are below. We have experience of a tree whose roots are upward. If one stands on the bank of a river or any reservoir of water, he can see that the trees reflected in the water are upside down. So on the bank of the river, of course, we know that all the trees are having branches upwards and the roots are downwards, but the reflection appears to be upside down. So the material world is actually a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. The branches go downward and the roots upward. This is for the reflection. Similarly, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. The material world is but a shadow of reality. In the shadow, there's no reality or substantiality, but from the shadow, we can understand that there are substance and reality. So when there is a shadow, we know that there is a real figure. Just like they say that when there is smoke, there is fire. So if there is a material world, so logically there must be a spiritual world, and that spiritual world is the purest version, while this material world is the perverted reflection of it. The desert, there is no water, but the mirage suggests that there is such a thing as water. In the material world, there is no water, there is no happiness, but the real water of actual happiness is there in the spiritual world. So also in our previous sessions, we have seen all the sufferings that we have to go through in this material world. However, as mentioned earlier, due to being deluded by the three modes of material nature, a lot of conditioned souls actually fail to realize that they are suffering. So these are the verses from chapter 15. The first verse, the chapter is titled Purushottam Yoga. So the first verse, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Udo Moolam Matashakam Ashwattam Prahuravyam Chandamshi Yascha Pranani Yastam Vesa Vedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So the tree which is upside down, it is referred to as the material world. So as we can see from this illustration here, the material world is the reflection or perverted reflection of the spiritual world. And actually in the 15th chapter, Purushottam Yoga, the first few verses talk about the material world, but the remaining, beyond the fifth verse, it mostly talks about the spiritual world, and how it is different from the material world in terms of the living beings who are there in the spiritual world, how Purushottam, the supreme person, is above the fallible and infallible beings. Like in one of the verses in chapter 15, it is stated that the living beings in this material world are fallible beings, and those who are the liberated beings in the spiritual world, they are infallible. However, Krishna being the supreme person, he's above, like he's transcendental to both types of beings. And in the second verse of chapter 15, Adaschaudam Prastasya Guna Pravalta Vishya Pravala Adaschamunani Anusantatani Karmanu Bandini Manushaloke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. So still it is referring to the material world, where it actually refers to the tree, and the tree gets nourished by the three modes of material nature, and the twigs are the objects of the senses. So even in chapter 2 of the Gita, 2.62, in 2.62 and 2.63, there are like 8 stages beginning from contemplation on the sense objects. So whenever we are attracted to sense objects, it leads to attachment, then anger, attachment, lust, anger, and towards the last stage, which is total destruction. So as long as we are trapped or deluded by the three modes of material nature, Krishna's Maya Shakti, or the inferior material energy, will keep pulling us towards it, and we'll have to be trapped in material bondage, being subject to rebirth in the 84 lakh species, which we saw last week in last session. So that is the description regarding this material world in terms of the reflection of the spiritual world. Then in verse 3 and 4, stated, the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. So it is also said that whenever we are driven by lust, like lust can be also equated to any form of desire, like even any material desire. So it works in such a way where even by engaging in sense gratification, it actually leads to further bondage, because it is like pouring oil to the burning fire. So the only solution is through detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that supreme personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. So as mentioned earlier, this material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So we can never achieve true happiness in the material world. Like, of course, for devotees, we know that we are suffering in this material world, but the Maya Shakti of Krishna is so strong that it even deludes a lot of people to the point where they don't even realize that they are suffering. So to achieve true happiness, we have to look for the reality, and we should not be obsessed with the shadow, which is the material world. So the only solution is to go back to the spiritual world. Then also in the intro part, the Lord suggests that we attain the spiritual world in the following manner, referring to the 5th verse in chapter 15, that Padam Avyayam or eternal kingdom can be reached by one who is Nirmana Moha. Nirmana Moha means that being free from false prestige and illusion. What does this mean? We are after designations. Someone wants to become sir, someone wants to become lord, someone wants to become the president or rich man or a king or something else. So actually here Prabhupada has been using mostly these British titles. Of course, in Malaysia we have the other titles like Dato Tun. As long as we are attached to these designations, we are attached to the body because designations belong to the body. But we are not these bodies, and realizing this is the first stage in spiritual realization. So even if we recall from the ugly episode of the pandemic, a lot of people tend to think that gaining a lot of all sorts of titles, uh, for some people that means a lot, but once the spirit soul departs from the material body, all the material bodies are called as dead bodies. So and even from that very moment, the material body starts to decay, and without realizing that, a lot of people are still obsessed with material designations, and that becomes the cause for further bondage. We are associated with the three modes of material nature, but we must become detached through devotional service to the Lord. If we are not attached to devotional service to the Lord, then we cannot become detached from the modes of material nature. Designations and attachments are due to our lust and desire, our wanting to lord it over the material nature. So, as we know, we were originally part and parcel of Krishna in the spiritual world. However, we fell to this material world due to our tendency or desires to become Ishvara and Purusha, meaning controllers and enjoyers. As long as we don't give up this propensity of lording it over material nature, there is no possibility of returning to the kingdom of the Supreme. So though we had this desire to become Ishvara and Purusha and lord it over the material nature, the reality is that material nature is the one which is controlling us through the three modes of material nature. Like we saw from our previous sessions that the three modes of material nature, they act as puppeteers who fully control us since we are conditioned souls. So the only solution to break free from this control of material nature is to engage in devotional service so that we can go back to the spiritual world. Then in the 5th verse, Krishna says, Nirmana Moha Jisasanga Dosha Adhyatma Nitya Vinivruta Kama Dvandveri Mukta Sugadukta Samjen Gachanti Amuta Padam Vivam Tat. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. So being free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, to understand the eternal, like as long as we are obsessed with material designations and material wealth, it can be said that we haven't understood what is eternal, and we also have to be done with material lust, and we have to be free from dualities of not just happiness, distress. It is also like a victory, loss, profit, loss, and all those dualities. So only then we can arrive at the starting point towards complete surrender to attain the eternal abode. So up to the 5th verse in chapter 15, a brief description of the material world is given in relation to the spiritual world, like how a material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. And starting from the 6th verse, a lot of descriptions are given regarding the spiritual world and also the supreme person, Purushottam. Then in 15.6, it stated, Natat Basayati Suryo, Nashasanko Napavaka, Yadgatva Nanivatante, Taddama Paramamama. That supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. So we know that in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna's bodily effulgence, the Brahma Jyoti, which emanates from Krishna's transcendental body, it illuminates the entire spiritual world. Like he is there in Goloka Vrindavan. However, the Brahma Jyoti, which originates from his body, lightens up the entire spiritual world, including all the other Vaikuntha planets. However, the material world, which is devoid of that light, is the dark spot in which we are trapped in. So this darkness is, it doesn't just mean being devoid of light, but darkness also means being devoid of knowledge. So as long as we don't gain real knowledge about the spiritual world, for sure there's no possibility of making any attempts to even go back there. And actually, this is another verse which is similar to the verse in chapter 15. In 8.21 also, Krishna says, Avyakto akshara iti yuktas tammao paramam gatim yam prapyana nivaltante taddama paramam mama. That eternal abode of mind, that which the Vedantis describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns. That is my supreme abode. So Krishna's supreme abode is unmanifest and infallible, because this material world is fallible, because it is subject to repeated cycles of creation and annihilation. Even during the 1 day period of Brahma, there are many cycles in which the material world becomes manifest and unmanifest, like creation and annihilation. However, the spiritual world is eternal. And we also know the 3 types of energies of Krishna. His superior spiritual energy, his inferior material energy, and we being conditioned souls, we are actually trapped in between. So as stated in chapter 7 of the Gita, the marginal living entities or conditioned souls are actually trapped in the middle of the 2 types of energies. Though we belong to Krishna's superior spiritual energy, due to conditioning and being dominated by the 3 modes of material nature, we belong to the marginal portion of Krishna's energy. So even when we try to progress towards spiritual realization, the Maya Shakti will keep pulling us, and Srila Prabhupada describes it as the tug of war. So the title of this session is Material Nature. So even the material nature emanates from Krishna's material energy, his inferior material energy. Even the conditioned souls who may deny that, like non-believers who deny the existence of God, and when they say everything comes from nature, they are actually referring to material nature, which also originates from Krishna's energy only. So those who refuse to surrender to Krishna's spiritual energy, they also finally end up surrendering to Krishna's material energy. Then it is also stated that the three modes of material nature, they are actually like a byproduct of Krishna's material energy. So as we know, we also had one session on these three modes of material nature titled Goodness is Not Good Enough. So in that session, we saw that Krishna starts to talk about the three modes of material nature from chapter 2 itself. And then from chapter 2, in all the chapters, somehow there's always this mention regarding the three modes of material nature. However, there's one chapter dedicated to the three modes of material nature, which is chapter 14. In 14.4, Krishna says, Sarva yoni shukamteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasham brahma yoni am bija pradapida. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. So we should also understand that we are not we are all spirit souls, and therefore there is no birth or death for the spirit soul. However, whenever we take a new material body out of the 84 lakh species, so for all the different types of material bodies which are there in this material nature, they are actually it appears to be like we are taking birth and death, but it's just because we are taking different types of bodies. But still, not just those 84 lakh species, but the entire material nature is also it becomes manifest and unmanifest due to Krishna's material energy. Where we also know that Mahavishnu, when he glances at the material nature, all the different types of universes become manifest. Then in the 5th verse of chapter 14, the three modes of material nature are mentioned. Sattvam rajas tama iti guna prakriti sambhava nivatnanti mahabhavo dehe dehinam avyayam. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So it's stated here, Nibatnati Mahavao Dehe Dehinam Avyam. So it especially refers to us, like the conditioned souls who are embodied in material bodies. So we are under the control of these three modes because we are embodied in material bodies. So as long as we are trapped in this material world, like there's also another verse from chapter 18, 18.40, where it is stated that all the material living beings in the material world, even up to Brahma in Satyaloka, all the living entities are subject to these three modes of material nature. So we have to transcend these modes, even the mode of goodness, to go to the spiritual world. Then in chapter 14 also, the various aspects related to the three modes are explained. From 14.6 to 8, the definition for the three modes are given. Like goodness, goodness is related to a positive attribute, and ignorance is the exact opposite of it. And the mode of passion is like in between. However, even goodness is not good enough, as we already saw in one of our previous sessions. So even the mode of goodness is still a mode of material nature. So we still have to transcend even the mode of goodness to attain the spiritual world. Then in 14.9, the different types of conditioning are mentioned for the three modes. And in 14.10, it's stated Rajas Tamas cha vibhuya sattvam bhavati bharata rajas sattvam tamas chaiva tamas sattvam rajas tata. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance, O son of Bharata. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there's always competition for supremacy. This is quite a significant verse in this chapter because it is stated that among these three modes, meaning between the three puppeteers, there's always competition to dominate the living entities. So even when we can only transcend the modes of the three modes, like for conditioned souls, we are in the mode of passion or ignorance. Maybe for exalted devotees, they are like in the mode of goodness or kind of like maybe beyond that, but still for most people are in the mode of passion and ignorance. So in order for us to transcend the three modes, we still have to elevate ourselves to the mode of goodness, and then from that gradually we can transcend the mode of goodness to become transcendental to the three modes. However, when we try to do that, there will always be competition between the three modes, where even when we try to achieve the mode of goodness, the mode of passion or ignorance will try to bring us down. So there's this interesting example given by most other preachers, like suppose when we are trying to wake up in the morning, when the when we hear the alarm clock, the mode of goodness will tell us to wake up immediately and start the day, but the mode of ignorance will force us to go back to sleep. So similarly, in our daily life, in everything that we do, there's always this competition between these three modes. So even to attain the mode of goodness itself is a challenge. However, to be completely free from material bondage, we still have to transcend even the mode of goodness. So there's no other way to achieve that apart from engaging in Krishna's devotional service. And in 14.11 to 13, the symptoms of prominence for the three modes are given. Then in 14.14 and 15, the destination for the three modes are given. Like those who live their lives in the mode of goodness, they can take birth in the higher planets. So this is the problem. Even if we spend our entire life in the mode of goodness, we can at most go to the higher planets, which are still in the material world. That's why it's important to transcend the modes. Then from 14.16 to 18, other aspects like the results of action and the destinations are given. Then from 14.19 to the last verse in chapter 14, that is verse 27, it talks about transcending the modes to become a gunatit. And in 14.26, the second last verse of chapter 14, it is Krishna says, Mam Chaiva Vicharena Bhakti Yogena Sevati Sagunan Samati Jaitan Brahmobhoyaya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So in this verse, Krishna gives the recipe to transcend the modes, like by engaging in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances. So those are the keywords: full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances. Only that is the formula to transcend the modes. Then after chapter 14, we have chapter 15, which is Purushottam Yoga, about the Supreme Person. As we saw earlier, even in chapter 15, there are references to the modes of material nature, about how they cause bondage in this material world. And in chapter 16 also, it talks about the Daivasura Sampada Vibhaga Yoga, the divine and demoniac qualities. So even if we look in that chapter, the divine qualities are closely related to the mode of goodness, and demoniac qualities are related to the mode of passion and ignorance. Then in chapter 17, about the divisions of faith, it also talks about the three modes according to 5 aspects, starting from faith in the 3 modes, and then the different types of foods in the 3 modes, then the different types of sacrifices in the 3 modes, and also austerity and charity in the 3 modes. That is in chapter 17. And then still in chapter 18 also, the modes are still explained in several other aspects, like renunciation in the 3 modes, knowledge in the 3 modes, work and worker in the 3 modes, intelligence, determination, and happiness in the 3 modes. So since we are in the material world, we are always subject to the control of these 3 modes of material nature, and they control us in various aspects of our life, as described in the Gita itself. Like in even after so much explanation in chapter 14, in the remaining chapters also, we can clearly see how various other aspects related to our daily life, they are dominated by the 3 modes. So we have seen how we are trapped in this material world, and how the 3 modes, which are mere byproducts of the material energy of Krishna, how they dominate us in this material world. So now we are going to look at how this material world was constructed. If we look at descriptions in the Gita, we know that in chapter 11, on the Vishwarupa Darshan, where Arjuna gets this vision of the Virat Rupa. So that concept of Virat Rupa explains how the entire material world was created. However, it is usually this chapter is seen as something like how Arjuna got this magical darshan of Krishna's unseen form with many heads, arms, and legs. However, this topic is closely connected to the entire material nature, of how the material nature was constructed in the context of the Virat Rupa. Though we know that Krishna is there in the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, in his two-handed form, he also descended to the material world in that two-handed form. However, he also resides in the Vaikuntha planets in as Narayana in his four-handed form. But in the material world, the entire personification of the material world is described as the Virat Rupa, and that Virat Rupa was the form which was revealed to Arjuna in chapter 11 of the Gita. However, it should also be noted that Arjuna did not request Krishna to reveal his Virat Rupa because he doubted Krishna. As stated by Arjuna in the beginning of the chapter itself, Arjuna said, by my hearing the instructions, your instructions, you have given me about these most confidential spiritual subjects. My illusion has now been dispelled. O lotus-eyed one, I've heard from you in detail about the appearance and disappearance of every living entity, and I've realized your inexhaustible glories. So, from the beginning of chapter 11 itself, Arjuna clearly states that he has been convinced about everything that Krishna has explained to him, especially in chapter 10. Krishna talks about his various opulences. So, in the beginning of chapter 11, Arjuna clearly says that he is convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but still he just has that curiosity to see the Virat Rupa of Krishna. O greatest of all personalities, I wish to see how you have entered into this cosmic manifestation. I want to see that form of yours. If you think that I'm able to behold your cosmic form, O my Lord, O Master of all mystic power, then kindly show me that unlimited universal self. Here, the choice of words by Arjuna is very is worth noting, because he says that he wishes to see the Virat Rupa of Krishna, and he also says he is requesting Krishna to kindly show the Virat Rupa if you think that I'm able to behold your cosmic form. So it's not like Arjuna is challenging Krishna, he is requesting. So after the fourth verse, Krishna starts to reveal the Virat Rupa, and he also explains regarding the Virat Rupa. But of course, before that, he gives Arjuna the divine vision to witness the Virat Rupa. So that Virat Rupa is actually described a lot more in detail in Bhagavatam. So as we know, the first canto of Bhagavatam deals with what happened after the Mahabharata war. And then towards the end of the first canto, we have this episode where Maharaj Parikshit gets cursed by the Ravana boy. And in the last chapter of the first canto, Shukadev Goswami arrives to start the discourse of Bhagavatam with Parikshit Maharaj. Then in the second canto, the conversation between Sukadev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj starts. In the first chapter of the second canto itself, Sukadev Goswami starts to explain about the Virat Rupa through how Krishna created this material manifestation. In second canto, first chapter, verse 24, it stated, this gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material manifestation is the personal body of the absolute truth, wherein the universal resultant past, present, and future of material time is experienced. So the entire material world is actually the personal body of the absolute truth. So as we know, in from the concept of Purusha avatars, which is also mentioned in the first canto. In the first canto also, we have in chapter 2 and 3, the Purusha avatar concept is explained regarding the three Purusha avatars beginning from Mahavishnu. So the entire material world is described as the Virat Rupa of Krishna's expansion, as Mahavishnu, and then Garbhodakashayi Vishnu and Shirodakashayi Vishnu. The gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is the subject for the Virat conception. Persons who have realized it have studied we also know regarding these 14 planetary systems in the material world. So there are lower planetary systems, the middle part, and also the upper planetary systems. So the entire thing is equated to the body of the Virat Rupa. So the bottom part of the body is equated to the lower planetary systems. Then towards the middle of the torso is compared to the middle region of the Earth planet, and then the upper parts are compared to the upper planetary systems. So it is explained by Sukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj in the first chapter. But these descriptions, as we shall see later, are also given by Brahma to Narada in the 5th chapter of the 2nd canto. The knees of the universal form are the planetary system of the name Stala. So there are we know that the lowest planet in the 14 planetary systems known as Patal Loka, then Patala, Rasatala, Mahatala, Talatala, Utala, Vitala, Atala. So these are the lower planetary systems. So they are described as beginning from the lower body of the Virat Rupa. Then the topmost planetary system known as Satyaloka is the head of the Virat Purusha. His arms are the demigods headed by Indra. The 10 directional sides are his ears, and physical sound is his sense of hearing. His nostrils are the 2 Ashwini Kumaras, and material fragrance is his sense of smell. His mouth is the blazing fire. So all the different components of the material world are described as the different body parts of the Virat Purusha. So it's stated here like his palate is the director of water Varna, and the juice or essence of everything is his tongue. Then here it is also stated that his jaws of teeth are Yama, god of death, who punishes the sinners. So this is also a significant verse from the Bhagavatam, which can be traced back to the description given in Gita in chapter 11, because in Gita chapter 11, Arjuna says in 11.25, O Lord of Lords, I cannot keep my balance seeing your blazing death-like faces and awful teeth. In all directions, I am bewildered. All the sons of Dhritarashtra, along with their allied kings, and Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and our chief soldiers also are rushing into your fearful mouths. And some I see trapped with heads smashed between your teeth. So the description given in Bhagavatam says that the jaws of teeth are Yama. The jaws of teeth of the Virat Purusha are referred to as Yama, the god of death. And Arjuna also explains in the Gita that he's seeing the sons of Dhritarashtra and even the soldiers in the side of Pandavas rushing into the mouth of the Virat Rupa of Krishna. And some I see trapped with heads smashed between your teeth. So referring to death. Then there are further explanations regarding the different body parts of the Virat Purusha. Like the rivers are the veins of the gigantic body. The trees are the hairs of his body. His activities are the reactions of the 3 modes of material nature. And yeah, there are like endless descriptions of the Virat Purusha. Of course, it all these clearly explain the wonders of this material world, of how the various living beings and also the other aspects of the material world. So if even the perverted reflection of the spiritual world is so wonderful, so we cannot really imagine how wonderful the spiritual world would be. But still, the saddest part is that since the material world appears to be so wonderful, a lot of people tend to remain here. So in the first chapter of the second canto, Shukadev Goswami gives all these descriptions about the Virat Rupa to Parikshit Maharaj, but they are still like a kind of a surface level. So in the 37th verse of the first chapter in second canto, Shukadev Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj that the Virat Purusha's face is the Brahmanas, his arms are the Kshatriyas, his thighs are the Vaishyas, and the Shudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him, and it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord. So this is mentioned by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj in the first chapter of the second canto, but the same thing will also be mentioned by Brahma to Narada in the 5th chapter of the second canto. That also in the 37th verse, where Brahma tells Narada that the Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaishyas his thighs, and the Shudras are born of his legs. So here Brahma is referring to the Virat Purusha. Then in chapter 1, Shukadev Goswami concludes the chapter by saying that I have explained the gross material gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead, that is the Virat Purusha. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world. So Shukadev Goswami also says that there is nothing more than the Virat Purusha in this material world. However, the Virat Rupa of the material world is restricted to the material world, which is only 1/4 of Krishna's entire energy. 3/4 of Krishna's energy are there in the spiritual world. So there is a lot beyond the material world. Then Shukadev Goswami also says one should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations, just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on him, the only all blissful absolute truth. Otherwise, one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. So here also Shukadev Goswami makes the distinction between the different varieties of the expansions and avatars of Krishna. However, he also emphasizes that one must concentrate the mind on him, that is Krishna, the Swayam Rupa of Krishna, the only all blissful absolute truth. So according to Sukadeva Goswami also, that is the only proper method to achieve liberation. Then in chapter 5 of the second canto, a lot of the things which were described by Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj in the first chapter are also explained by Brahma to Narada in the 5th chapter, but they are like a bit more in depth. So Brahma says in the 35th verse of the 5th chapter, the Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it, and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assumed the Virat Rupa with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. So we can see that Brahma is also mentioning similar things which were mentioned by Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. So please note regarding this Virat Rupa thing with thousands of legs, arms, mouth, heads, etc. because it also traces back to the description in Gita. Arjuna saw in that universal form unlimited mouths, eyes, unlimited wonderful visions. The form was decorated with many celestial ornaments and bore many divine upraised weapons. He wore celestial garlands and garments, and many divine scents were smeared over his body. All was wondrous, brilliant, unlimited, all expanding. So we can see that the description regarding the Virat Purusha given in Bhagavatam also matches the description of the Virat Rupa which was seen by Arjuna in the Gita. Also stated in the Gita, if hundreds of thousands of suns were to rise at once in the sky, their radiance might resemble the effulgence of the Supreme Person in that universal form. At that time, Arjuna could see in the universal form of the Lord the unlimited expansions of the universe situated in one place, although divided into many, many thousands. So the description of the Virat Rupa in Gita as seen by Arjuna also matches the descriptions given in Bhagavatam. So regarding the planetary systems also, Brahma describes to Narada regarding the planetary systems beginning from the legs of the Virat Purusha, like the lower planetary systems are situated in his legs. The middle planetary systems beginning from Loka are situated in his navel, and the still higher planetary systems occupied by the demigods and highly cultured sages and saints are situated in the chest of the Supreme Lord. Then further description regarding the upper planetary systems. Satyaloka is described as being situated on the head of the Virat Rupa. The spiritual planets, however, are eternal. So even regarding this conception of Virat Rupa, the topmost portion, the head of the Virat Rupa also is referred to the topmost planet, that is Satyaloka. So even here, Brahmaji himself makes a clear distinction between the material world represented by the Virat Rupa and the spiritual world. He makes a clear distinction between the two. Then Brahma also says, my dear son Narada, know from me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Atala, is situated on the waist. The second, Vitala, is situated on the thighs. The third, Sutala, on the knees. The fourth, Talatala, on the shanks. The fifth, Mahatala, on the ankles. The sixth, Rasatala, on the upper portion of the feet. And the seventh, Patala, on the soles of the feet. Thus, the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. So again, this is quite similar to what Sukadeva Goswami explained to Parikshit Maharaj in the first chapter of the second canto. But in the fifth chapter, there's more detail given by Brahma to Narada. Then Brahma continues, others may divide the whole planetary systems into 3 divisions, namely the lower planetary system on the legs up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems, Loka, from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. So we have seen very detailed descriptions regarding how the Virat Rupa represents the entire material world. However, even in the third canto of Bhagavatam, in chapter 26, there are more in-depth details given by Lord Kapila in his conversation with his mother Devavati, daughter of Swayambhu Manu. So apart from the Virat Rupa concept, whenever we talk about the elements of material nature, we always come across three numbers. Those numbers are 8, 16, and 24. So when you talk about the 8 elements, we have seen that in Gita, chapter 7, the 4th verse, Bhumi Apanalo Vayu, Kamano Buddhi Evacha, Ankara Ityame, Binna Prakrti Astada. It's regarding where Krishna talks about his material energies. He talks about the 8 elements, the 5 gross material elements, the Panchamahabhut, plus the 3 elements of the subtle animals, which include mind, intelligence, and false ego. So those are the 8 elements. And then there are also 16 elements explained in this chapter from the 3rd canto of Bhagavatam. But all these 8 and 16, they also originate from a superset of 24 elements. So these 24 elements are called pradhana when they are unmanifest. These material elements are called pradhana when they are unmanifest, and they are called prakriti when they are in the manifest stage. So the 24 elements are the 5 gross elements, the Panchamahabhut, the 5 subtle elements, meaning the 5 sense objects, the 4 internal senses, the 5 senses for gathering knowledge, known as Jnana Indriya, and another 5 senses known as Karma Indriya. So total there are 24 elements, out of which the 8 and 16 elements are mentioned in other parts. So the 5 gross elements referred to as Panchamahabhut, earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then the 5 subtle elements refer to smell, taste, color, touch, and sound. These are the sense objects which can be identified using the Jnana Indriyas. Those are the senses for acquiring knowledge. And then we also have the 5 senses for working, known as Karma Indriyas. So here itself, we can see 5 gross, 5 subtle elements. Then, so 5 plus 5. Then another 10 for the senses, Jnana Indriyas and Karma Indriyas. So 20 elements here. Then remaining 4 elements are mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. So it's stated here, contaminated consciousness, because it's obviously for the conditioned souls in the material world. So these are the remaining 4 elements plus the 20, resulting in the total aggregate of 24 elements. So we have seen in-depth details related to the material world. These are all from the Bhagavatam, but also in the Gita, regarding the Virat Rupa, that is also related to the personification of the material world. So during the beginning of chapter 11, Arjuna requests Krishna to reveal the Virat Rupa. But after seeing the Virat Rupa, he admits that he is gladdened, but at the same time, his mind is disturbed with fear. So he says, therefore, please bestow your grace upon me and reveal again your form as the personality of Godhead. O universal form, O thousand-armed Lord, I wish to see you in your four-armed form, with helmeted head and with club, wheel, conch, and lotus flower in your hands. I long to see you in that form. So in the beginning of chapter 11, Arjuna asked requested Krishna to show the Virat Rupa out of curiosity, but after seeing that, he still longs to see the original form of Krishna. Then Krishna reveals the four-handed form, and then he goes back to the original two-handed form. However, Krishna also says that no one before you has ever seen this universal form of mine, for neither by studying the Vedas, nor by performing sacrifices, nor by charity, nor by pious activities, nor by severe penances can I be seen in this form in the material world. So even before this Vishrupa Darshana, Krishna has been mentioning in various other chapters that how he chose to impart the knowledge of the Gita to Arjuna, because Arjuna was not just a dear friend, but he was also Krishna's devotee. So that itself was the qualification of Arjuna for him to be blessed with this divine vision of the Vishwarupa Darshan. So when the Vishwarupa Darshan was revealed to Arjuna, as we know, Sanjaya also had this divine vision of seeing whatever was happening on the battlefield. So Sanjaya was also explaining about the darshan to Dhritarashtra. So towards the end of the 11th chapter, Krishna first revealed the Virat Rupa, and then he displayed the four-armed form, and then at last showed his two-armed form. When Arjuna saw Krishna in his original form, then he said, I am now composed in mind and I am restored to my original nature. Then Krishna said, my dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form which is so dear. So Krishna, in the last two verses of the 11th chapter, Krishna says that only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way you can enter into the mysteries of my understanding. So just like in many other chapters, even in chapter 11, Krishna himself emphasizes the importance of devotional service. Then in the last verse of chapter 11, Krishna says, Mat karma krin mat parama, mat bhakta sangha varjita, nirvaira sarva bhuteshu yasamameti pandava. So there are 5 aspects mentioned here by Krishna: mat karma, mat parama, mat bhakta sangha varjita, nirvaira. So Srila Prabhupada has explained all these 5 aspects in the purport. So these are important aspects for us to engage in devotional service. So the first one is regarding mat karma. When Krishna says mat karma, he is referring to my work, meaning the works which are called Krishna karma. One may be engaged in various activities, but one should not be attached to the result of his work. The result should be done only for Krishna. For example, one may be engaged in business, but to transform that activity into Krishna consciousness, one has to do business for Krishna. If Krishna is the proprietor of the business, then Krishna should enjoy the profit of the business. Fortunately, we still have a lot of wealthy people who are willing to give their wealth for Krishna conscious activities. If a businessman is in possession of thousands and thousands of dollars, and if he has to offer all this to Krishna, he can do it. This is work for Krishna. Instead of constructing a big building for his sense gratification, he can construct a nice temple of Krishna, and he can install the deity of Krishna and arrange for the deity's service as is outlined in the authorized books of devotional service. This is all Krishna karma. So this is regarding the first aspect, mat karma. The word mat parama, the second aspect, refers to one who considers the association of Krishna to be the highest perfection of life. Such a person does not wish to be elevated to the higher planets or even the highest planet of the universe, Brahmaloka. He has no attraction for that. He is only attracted to being transferred to the spiritual sky. So even the topmost planet in the material world, Brahmaloka, is still within the material world. For devotees, our goal should be the spiritual world. That is to escape completely from the material world. Not even Brahmaloka is the solution to our problems. And even in the spiritual sky, he is not satisfied with merging into the glowing Brahmajyoti effulgence, for he wants to enter the highest spiritual planet, namely Krishnaloka or Goloka Vrindavana. He has full knowledge of that planet, and therefore he is not interested in any other. So, even in today's session regarding Prakrti or material nature, though the title is related to material nature, we also saw references to the spiritual world, because even the material world is simply a perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So we can only endeavor to attain the spiritual world if we know about the spiritual world. Then the third aspect, Mat Bhakta, refers to being a devotee of Krishna. As indicated by the word Mat Bhakta, he fully engages in devotional service, specifically in the 9 processes of devotional engagement: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandam, Dasham, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. One can engage in all 9 devotional processes, or 8, or 7, or at least in one, and that will surely make one perfect. So from Prabhupada's purport, he mentions that even if we engage in one of out of the 9 methods of devotional service, we can achieve perfection. So if we see the 9 devotional processes, the first one, Shravanam, is actually the easiest process, where we just have to listen to Krishna Katha by attending programs. So it is actually the easiest method, and all the other processes are like in ascending order of difficulty. Like Atmanivedanam, complete surrender to the Lord, is like the most difficult process. However, Prabhupada himself has mentioned that even if you focus on one of the 9 processes, we can achieve perfection. Like Kirtanam is like it appears to be more difficult than Shravanam. However, to do Kirtanam, we have to engage in Shravanam first. Like even if we look at the example of Bhagavatam, Shuta Goswami was doing Kirtanam. He was preaching to the sages at Naimisharanya after listening to the discourse between Sukadev Goswami and Parishit Maharaj. Then the fourth aspect, Sangha Varjita, means that one should disassociate himself from persons who are against Krishna. Not only are the atheistic persons against Krishna, but so also are those who are attracted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. So from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it stated, Anya Abhilashita Sunyam, Jnana Kramadi Anavratam, Anukulyena Krishnanu, Shilnam Bhakti Ruttama. So from Nectar of Devotion, it is stated that true bhakti should be devoid of all sorts of material desires. In this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami clearly states that if anyone wants to execute unalloyed devotional service, he must be freed from all kinds of material contamination. He must be freed from the association of persons who are addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. When freed from such unwanted association and from the contamination of material desires, one favorably cultivates knowledge of Krishna, that is called pure devotional service. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya valjanam. one should think of Krishna and act for Krishna favorably, not unfavorably. So we should avoid association with those who are opposed to Krishna consciousness, and we should also always avoid unfavorable conditions. Anything that is not favorable to develop our Krishna consciousness should be avoided. Then the last aspect out of the 5 is nirvaira, meaning no enemy. A devotee situated in Krishna consciousness knows that only devotional service to Krishna can relieve a person from all the problems of life. A Krishna conscious person knows that if a man is suffering, it is due to his forgetfulness of his eternal relationship with Krishna. Therefore, the highest benefit one can render to human society is relieving one's neighbor from all material problems. In such a way, a pure devotee is engaged in the service of the Lord. So, being Krishna conscious, we should not just look into our spiritual journey, but preferably we should also try to preach to others about the miseries of this material world and why it's important to escape from here and go back to the spiritual world. Now, back to the summary of today's topic. The universal form of Krishna, which is a temporary manifestation, and the form of time which devours everything, and even the form of Vishnu 400 have all been exhibited by Krishna. Thus, Krishna is the origin of all these manifestations. It is not that Krishna is a manifestation of the original Vishnurupa or Vishnu. Krishna is the origin of all forms. So that is again related to the difference between expansion and avatar. So when our perspective is restricted to this material world only, we tend to believe that Krishna is an avatar of Vishnu, where the truth is that Krishna is the supreme Swayam Rupa, from the source from which all other expansions emanate, including the expansion of Vishnu. There are hundreds and thousands of Vishnus, but for a devotee, no form of Krishna is important, but the original form, two-handed Shyamsundar. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that those who are attached to the Shyamsundara form of Krishna in love and devotion can see him always within the heart and cannot see anything else. One should understand, therefore, that the purport of this 11th chapter is that the form of Krishna is essential and supreme. So, regardless of the fact that Arjuna wanted to see the Virat Rupa of Krishna, he only realized that Virat Rupa was not very pleasing, and he wanted to see the 400 form and then 200 form, the original form of Krishna. So only that form will, that form which reflects the original form of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, only that is the most pleasing form to all devotees. So from here also we can see that the Virat Rupa, which is associated to the material world, is actually not pleasing to the devotees, but the original form in Goloka Vrindavan is most pleasing to devotees. Therefore, from there also we can see how important it is for us to focus on our journey to the spiritual world. So as mentioned in this paragraph, this is the verse from Brahma Samhita. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Tantasadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primal Lord, who is Shyam Sundar, Krishna himself, with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So this original form of Shyam Sundar is there in Goloka Vrindavan, and that's why it is important for us to go to Goloka, back to Godhead. So that's all for today's session. Thank you for attending. Any questions or comments? Hello.
Very
Okay.
nice to explain, Prabhu.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So,
Really a wonderful session, Dinesh.
okay. Thank you, Ru.
Very nice, very nice. Nicely researched and nicely compiled and nicely delivered. Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so all this recording will be available in YouTube. So I hope that everyone, share to all your family and friends, and hopefully they like the video lah. All right, the more like we have, the more we have, to what was it? Broadcast.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Okay,
And
thank
yeah, tomorrow will be a program in Ipoh. We are starting our first Namahatta program at 7 o'clock. So I hope Rajina Mataji, if you're available, you can come and join us.
Can Prabhu, I see. If my husband come back, I'll come.
Sure, Mataji.
Okay.
All right, take care. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
All right.